Hello everyone, my name is Andrei Lebedev. I'm a PhD student at the University of Sydney, and I would like to present our paper, which is a joint work between the University of Sydney, Redbelly and EPFL, so in the colleagues. And our paper is called Stabl, the sensitivity of blockchains to failures. In addition to the paper itself, our framework is open source. It is available on GitHub online, and we also got the artifact. We got the artifact submitted to the evaluation committee of Middleware, and we got 3 badges so that the artifact is available online. It was evaluated and functional. So that it works as described in the paper, and also we got the badge for replicated results, so that all of the results and the figures were independently reproduced during the experiments by the artifact evaluation committee. Blockchains are expected to be fault tolerant, so in the figure we can see a snapshot of Bitcoin network from 2022. Visualized are the nodes across the globe, and we see the clusters in the United States, Europe, and Asia. And if some blockchain nodes fail, the others are expected to take over so that the transactions can still be committed, finalized, and included in the blockchain. Also, some blockchains feature diverse implementations, like Ethereum. For example, there were cases when a particular implementation had a bug and caused a crash, but because there were multiple implementations available, the network still remained live. However, even with the expectations of fault tolerance, we can see an example of Solana with the timeline from 2021 to 2023, when it had 9 outages, which caused a total downtime of more than 150 hours, which, considering the availability, is less than 99%. And usually with the cloud applications, you might expect up to 3 nines availability. So this is less available than the regular cloud applications. And as a takeaway, we cannot just assume fault tolerance, but we need to measure it before making any claims. And to fill this gap, we introduce Stabl, which is a framework for sensitivity testing and analysis for blockchains. This is the first framework for a comparative evaluation of blockchain fault tolerance. We introduce 2 main features, which are novel sensitivity metric to compare and evaluate different blockchains in the baseline case without the faults and the case when the fault is introduced. And our second contribution is systematic fault injection, in which we define 4 different types of faults applicable to different blockchains under test in our experiments. And now I would like to present the details of these 2 contributions in detail. So our first contribution is the novel sensitivity metric. As you can see in the figure, we have the imperative cumulative distribution functions for 2 different experiments of a single blockchain. So we have the latencies in milliseconds on x-axis and the proportion of transactions committed with the given latencies on y-axis. The dark blue line corresponds to the baseline experiment without faults, and the light blue line corresponds to the altered experiment where we introduced a fault. And In red, we can see the area between those two lines, and this area is the sensitivity metric. The nice feature of the sensitivity metric is that it captures both the magnitude and the duration of impact of failure, meaning that how much does a particular failure affect the latency, in a sense, for a single transaction plus the duration. So for how long did the failure affect the experiment in total? And in the figure we can see the case where the baseline is always above the altered experiment, so that the area is technically positive in this case. However, there can also be a case when some transactions are not committed in the altered experiment when the faults are introduced, and in that case, in the altered experiment, some set of latencies for transactions will not be defined, and the area will be infinite. And we have also observed cases where in the altered experiment, the latencies of the transactions reduced for some of the transactions, and in that case, the area between the baseline and the altered might become negative, as the altered line will be above the baseline. To show the application of the sensitivity metric in practice, we introduce 4 types of systematic fault injections. Given a blockchain B with claimed fault tolerance of T faults, which can be different for different blockchains, like up to 1/5 of the network for Avalanche and Algorand, or up to 1/3 of the network for other blockchains. We have crashes, which is sensitivity for up to T fail stop crashes without recovery. Then the transient node failures, which is sensitivity to more than T crashes with recoveries, where we restart the node after some period of downtime. Then partition, which is sensitivity to network partitions, where one partition has more than the T nodes and the other partition has the rest of the network. And Byzantine node tolerance, which is sensitivity to protection against coalitions, where in this experiment we send the same transaction to more than T nodes, and then we wait for the response from all of the nodes which we send the transaction to. Now I would like to give you some more technical details of Stabl implementation, starting from the architecture. We use the Diablo benchmarking framework as our basis, and in the Stabl architecture, the Diablo primary is still the central coordinator of the experiment, which reads the configuration and orchestrates the whole experiment. So Diablo primary takes the failure mode, like crash or transient node failure, and the failure time, which is the duration of the failure during the experiment. And the key contribution of the Stabl framework are the observer nodes. So it is a process on each blockchain virtual machine which listens for signals from the primary, when to inject the faults and when to remove them. And in the architecture figure, we see the 4 types of observer nodes, like for example crashes, restarter, dropper, and restorer. And in this case, crasher and restarter are responsible for crashing the nodes and restarting the nodes when required. And for dropper and restorer, we can introduce packet drops for partitions and remove the packet drops again. As I mentioned in the previous slide, the basis of our work is the Diablo benchmarking framework, which was published in Eurosys in 2023. As well, in our paper in the Symposium on Distributed Ledger Technologies in 2023, we show that it is possible to get comparable results for local experiments based on adding the network latencies between the virtual machines. So we got comparable results to the AWS results in the Eurosys paper. Also, there are two other papers, one from Guerraoui and colleagues in Middleware 2023, where they evaluated the performance of permission blockchain systems, and in those experiments they had setups with added latency between the blockchain nodes as well. Plus, there was a work from Nasrullin and his colleagues in DApps in 2022, where they compared different blockchains as well, and they added, they had experiments with added latencies too. For the experimental evaluation of our framework and the blockchain comparison, we selected 5 modern blockchains, which are Algorand, Avalanche, Aptos, Redbelly, and Solana. We didn't select Bitcoin and Ethereum because they are known to be vulnerable to delays and favor availability over consistency. And the modern blockchains that we selected are claimed to be fault tolerant and are also expected to favor consistency instead. We selected sending rate of 200 transactions per second. We derived this from Avalanche limitations, from the default block time, block creation time, and the gas limit for the block. And our goal was not to stress test the blockchain in terms of their performance, but rather evaluate their fault tolerance. And for the experiment, we had 15 nodes in 15 virtual machines across the local cluster. We had 5 clients corresponding to 5 Diablo secondaries and 10 blockchain nodes, also known as servers. We show that sensitivity is measurable at small scale, so we can still see the impact of the faults even with 10 blockchain nodes. And of course, to measure the sensitivity and the transaction latencies, we send all the transactions to non-faulty blockchain nodes, because otherwise the latency wouldn't be defined. One of our interesting observations from the experiments are the lack of recovery for Solana and Avalanche. So in the figure we see the sensitivity score for the transient node failure experiment for different blockchains. So on the x-axis we have 5 different blockchains that we tested, and on y-axis we have the sensitivity score. And as we see for bars for Avalanche and Solana, we have the infinity sign, which means that the sensitivity score is infinite, because in the baseline case all the transactions were committed, so we had defined latencies, but in the failure case some transactions were lost, and we don't have the finalization time for them, hence we don't have the latency for them, and that's why the score is infinite. And so the reasons for the lack of recovery for these 2 blockchains, so for example for Solana the whole network crashed, so the nodes panicked, like the binaries didn't restart due to a synchronization bug in the configuration. And for Avalanche we had a deadlock, so the nodes remained online, but consensus stopped indefinitely, so there was no throughput, no new created blocks or committed transactions due to throttling mechanisms implemented in Avalanche. And here I would like to show the grand summary, so the sensitivity radar chart for all of the experiments in our paper. So on the axis we have 4 different fault types that I explained before, and we have the sensitivity score for these fault types, and the lines correspond to different blockchains. And this figure allows easy comparison of the sensitivity of different blockchains to the failures that we defined. And in this case, Redbelly was the least sensitive to all of the failures. So it's the area of the for Redbelly is the smallest here, followed closely by Algorand, and then followed by Aptos, and the most sensitive blockchains to the failures that we introduced were Avalanche and Solana, because they didn't handle transient node failures and partitions, so the network didn't continue to work after the failure was removed. The key takeaways that we found from the paper is, first of all, don't assume, experiment. So while the claims for the blockchain fault tolerance from different blockchains can vary wildly, it must be tested, because it all depends on the different hardware, different network, different workloads. Then we found that the transient failures affected the blockchains the most, like in the case for Avalanche and Solana. So while many systems handle permanent crashes up to T nodes well, when we even transiently fail more than T nodes, the whole network might not recover from those transient crashes or partitions. We also show that the design matters, like leaderless consensus algorithms in, for example, in Redbelly, or leader-based in Aptos and Solana, can affect the sensitivity when different faults are introduced. The fact that the mempool is either present or not, like in the case when Solana, where there is no mempool, and throttling in Avalanche, can all have massive dependability consequences. And Stabl, so the framework, our framework provides the tools to uncover these critical issues before they cause real-world outages. Our framework Stabl is open source. It is available on the website, so diablobench.github.io. The same link is available in the QR code below. So the artifact for the paper was evaluated, and the results were produced and given all of the 3 available badges. And it is also possible to integrate the Stabl framework into continuous integration and continuous deployment processes for development of the blockchain. So for example, when developer makes a particular change to blockchain and the tests are run, like with code coverage, we can see the percentage difference of the impact of a particular change given different fault types. Thank you so much for your attention.